The sea was quiet, but beneath its surface something was stirring, something heavy, something strange, something no one was prepared for. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. It all began when a series of unexplained underwater tremors were picked up by Coast Guard buoys drifting 20 miles from shore. These weren't the soft rumbles of shifting tides or drifting currents. They were sharp, localized, and deep. The kind of jolts only triggered by one thing, something massive crashing to the bottom of the ocean. Captain Izzy Barkley had been at sea for most of her life. A seasoned researcher and fearless diver, she had seen plenty abandoned wrecks, underwater caves, even the skeletal remains of ships long forgotten by time. But the message she received that morning was different. It was precise, urgent, and carried the weight of something more than just oceanic disturbance. She gathered her team and set out aboard a research vessel equipped with advanced sonar and an underwater drone. Izzy wasn't just the captain. She was also the mission's lead scientist, and she wasn't the type to wait around. As soon as they reached the coordinates, she suited up, dropped beneath the waves, and within minutes, her flashlight swept across something that shouldn't have been there. A container, a massive shipping container resting upright in the ocean floor, sediment intact, sealed, and completely out of place. Izzy resurfaced quickly. "Deploy the drone," she said to her crew. The container was too heavy and potentially too unstable for a human to investigate directly. With expert hands, Izzy took control of the drone from the deck and guided it deep below. The drone's camera panned slowly around the sunken object. Its metal walls were unusually clean for something submerged. No barnacles, no rust. Just rows of strange markings and bolts that looked newer than expected. "Clamps on the corners," Izzy instructed, and the drone latched its mechanical claws to the container's frame. The ship's crane began to pull. The cable groaned. The entire vessel leaned dangerously, as if the sea itself resisted their efforts to retrieve what had fallen. Crew members grabbed the railing as waves crashed over the sides. The crane shuddered under the load. "What the hell is in there?" someone muttered. With a loud, wet crash, the container finally breached the surface and landed hard onto the ship's deck. Water poured off its sides in sheets, but curiously, nothing came from within. No drips, no leaks. It was as if the contents inside had remained perfectly dry. Izzy stepped forward cautiously. "A shipping container isn't supposed to be sealed like this," she said. "They're not watertight. This thing, it was built to stay dry. Whatever's inside was never meant to get wet." The crew gathered, tools in hand, ready to pry the heavy doors open. "Wait," Izzy ordered. "We don't know what we're dealing with. Go slow." With bolt cutters and crowbars, they worked carefully. The main lock snapped free. The handles turned. And then, as the hinges creaked and the doors swung wide, the air changed. The laughter and chatter died down. Silence. Faces turned pale. Eyes widened. Because what they saw inside wasn't industrial cargo. It wasn't machinery or precious metals. It wasn't even supplies. It was a room. Fully furnished. A bed made neatly. A small table bolted to the floor, with 2 chairs tucked beneath it. A sofa with cushions. A faded rug. A shelf lined with books. Even a family photograph taped to the wall, its corners curling from age. It looked like someone had lived there. "Is this some kind of shelter?" one crew member whispered. "No," Izzy said quietly, stepping into the space. "This is someone's home." Everything inside was eerily preserved. A blanket folded on the bed, a pair of worn shoes beside it, a tea kettle resting on a hot plate. The container had been transformed into a living space and kept sealed, dry, and secure on the ocean floor. "Why?" Izzy whispered aloud. "Who lived here, and what happened to them?" No one had answers. They began to search. Tucked beneath a shelf was a stack of clothing, carefully packed in waterproof bags. Inside one of the drawers, canned food sealed tightly. There were notebooks filled with scrawled handwriting in Arabic. On the floor, scattered between items, lay a few loose photographs. One was of a man in his late 30s, smiling with a woman and 2 children. As the team examined each item, Izzy's eyes kept returning to the photo. "Who are you?" she whispered. Suddenly, one of her crew shouted from the far side of the container, "Captain, you need to see this!" In his hands was a sealed plastic bag. Inside it, a digital recorder. Izzy moved quickly, took the bag gently, and examined it under the ship's lights. It was still dry. She pressed play. Static. Then a voice. Male. Trembling. Thick with fear. "If you're hearing this, I hope it means someone found us. My name is Ahmed Osman. We need help. Please, you have to listen." The crew went silent. Izzy gripped the recorder tighter. "I recorded this before they noticed we were here. They don't know. I hid this," the voice continued. "We were trapped. forced into labor. We didn't know what this really was. The audio crackled and skipped. Then more words rushed, desperate. We're aboard the Evercargo Voyager, but I don't know for how much longer. Please, if you find this, help us. And then, silence. Izzy lowered the recorder slowly. The waves lapped softly against the side of the ship. Everyone on deck stood frozen, the weight of the message anchoring them in place. They hadn't just discovered a strange container. They had uncovered a distress call, a hidden cry for help, one that had been thrown into the sea like a message in a bottle, except this bottle had been buried beneath the waves, sealed in steel, meant to stay hidden. But now it was found, and somewhere was still in danger. Izzy didn't sleep that night. Even as the ship drifted calmly under a blanket of stars, her mind kept replaying the voice, the desperation, the urgency. Please, if you find this, help us. She sat alone in the control room, the recorder resting on the console beside her, its blinking light still pulsing quietly in the dark. The words wouldn't stop echoing in her ears. Evercargo Voyager. It was a name she'd heard before, barely. A few log entries in international shipping reports, always short, always vague. A massive freighter that never stayed long in port. It would appear on marine radar, dock for a few hours, refuel, offload minimal cargo, and vanish again. No customs inspections, no shipping manifests, just silence and movement. Izzy brought up the ship's last recorded coordinates. Her heart thumped as she realized. It wasn't far. No more than 20 kilometers off the coast, sitting in open water. Suspiciously still, she briefed her team at dawn. No one protested. They had all heard the message. They had all seen the home hidden in the deep. This was no longer a research mission. This was something else entirely. Before leaving, Izzy made one more call this time to the Coast Guard. She explained what they had found and played the audio over the line. She didn't need to embellish it. The voice on that tape was enough. The authorities took it seriously. Within 2 hours, patrol vessels joined Izzy's team, but they knew a direct approach might scare off the crew of the freighter. So, a plan was made. Izzy, along with 2 officers disguised as marine researchers, would approach first under the guise of conducting a fish migration survey. Their small dinghy cut through the waves, bouncing slightly as they neared the looming hull of the Evercargo Voyager. It was massive black, rusting at the edges, and almost eerily quiet for a vessel of its size. When they hailed the ship, no one responded for a long moment. Then finally, a voice crackled through a speaker. "You have 1 hour." A rope ladder dropped down. Izzy's hands shook slightly as she climbed. The metal burned warm in the sun, and her boots thudded softly onto the deck. A man met them stern, unsmiling. The captain, perhaps. He didn't give his name. "You have 1 hour," he repeated, then turned and walked away. Izzy and the officers began walking, pretending to scan the surroundings and take water samples. But every corridor they passed, every container stacked 3 high, felt like it hid something. Something watching. Something breathing. Then, out of instinctor, maybe Hope IZ, whispered a name under her breath. "Ahmed?" No response. She tried again, louder. "Ahmed Osman?" And then, movement, a clank of a latch. A container door opened just wide enough for a hand to reach out and pull her inside. Before the officers could react, they were yanked in too. The door slammed shut. They found themselves surrounded not by attackers, but by faces. Pale, wide-eyed, frightened. Men, women, even children. Inside this container was a hidden world. Bunk beds bolted to the floor, plastic containers filled with food, a water jug, a chemical toilet in the corner. The same layout they had seen inside the sunken container, but this one still in use. A man stepped forward, thin, tired, and yet there was something familiar in his eyes. Izzy stepped closer. "You're Ahmed." He stared at her for a long moment before nodding. "You found it?" "We did," Ahmed let out. A long breath, his body sagging with relief. "We didn't think anyone would," he said. "I recorded that 2 years ago, right before they threw my container overboard." He explained everything. They had boarded the ship after being promised safe passage to a better life, jobs, homes, freedom, but as soon as they were aboard, the doors closed. Passports were taken. They were told they owed debts, that they had to work, but they weren't allowed to leave. Ever. They lived inside containers like livestock. They worked below deck unloading, cleaning, repairing without pay, without breaks. If anyone resisted, they were punished. And those who caused trouble disappeared. Ahmed's voice broke as he described the night his container was chained and thrown into the sea. "They didn't know I had built it to float. I sealed it myself. I just hoped someone would find it before it was too late." And someone had. The officers quietly radioed the Coast Guard with a single word. "Confirmed." 15 minutes later, everything changed. The Coast Guard stormed the freighter. Officers poured onto the deck in full gear. The ship's crew was overwhelmed, unprepared for a coordinated raid. There were shouts, struggles, but no escape. Within the hour, the EverCargo Voyager was secured, crew members arrested, victims freed. Emergency ships arrived to transport the rescued to the mainland. Ahmed and the others walked off the ship, blinking into the daylight, some for the first time in years. The story hit the news within hours. Ghost ship exposed. Headlines read, "Human trafficking ring uncovered at sea." But to Izzy, it was never about the headlines. It was about the people. She stood beside Ahmed as he stepped onto land, clutching the photo of his family. His wife and children had made it safely to Europe years earlier. Through an embassy connection, they were contacted and within a week reunited. Izzy returned to her research vessel days later. The sea was calm again, her crew quiet, reflective. But this time, they didn't feel like scientists. They felt like witnesses, rescuers, protectors. The container that started it all was offloaded and stored at a government facility. It would be studied, documented, perhaps displayed someday. But to Izzy, it was something else entirely. It was a lifeboat disguised as metal, a message disguised as a room, a cry for help, buried beneath the sea and heard. And as her ship pulled away from shore, once again, Izzy looked out at the endless horizon and whispered a quiet promise. We'll keep watching. We'll keep listening. Because the ocean holds many secrets, but not all of them should stay hidden.